In the bustling city of Aquapolis, where water was life, there lived a man named Lerman. He wasn't your typical hero, no cape, no superpowers, just a guy with a plunger and a heart of gold.
I work in the sewage canals, keeping the city's lifeblood flowing. It's not glamorous, but it's important. Without me, the city would drown in its own filth.
Every day, Lerman would descend into the dark, damp tunnels beneath the city. He'd wade through murky waters, clearing blockages and fixing pipes. It was dirty work, but Lerman didn't mind. He knew that every clog he cleared meant clean water for someone above. In a way, he was like the city's invisible guardian.
The people of Aquapolis rarely think about me or my work. They turn on their taps, flush their toilets, and go about their day. But I don't do it for recognition. I do it because it's right. Because without me, the city would fall apart.
And in his own quiet way, Lerman was a hero. As the years went by, Lerman became something of a legend among his fellow workers. They called him the Drain Whisperer. It was said he could hear the voice of the sewers, could tell where a blockage was just by listening. Whether it was true or not, one thing was certain. Lerman loved his job, and he was damn good at it. While Lerman worked tirelessly to keep the city's water flowing, a sinister figure lurked in the shadows. His name was Captain Serpete, and he had a grudge against Aquapolis. Nobody knew why. Some said he was bitter about being passed over for a promotion. Others whispered that he was just plain evil. Whatever the reason, Serpete had made it his mission to bring the city to its knees.
To hurt Aquapolis, I have to target its most precious resource, water.
So he began a campaign of sabotage. At first it was small things. A clogged pipe here, a broken valve there. But as time went on, his attacks grew bolder and more frequent. The captain's methods were as varied as they were devious. He'd dump industrial waste into clean water sources. He'd sabotage pumping stations. Sometimes he'd even bribe city officials to look the other way. All the while, he took a perverse pleasure in watching the people of Aquapolis suffer.
My ultimate goal is to bring the city to its knees. I dream of a day when the taps will run dry, when the streets will flood with sewage. In my twisted mind, I see myself as a king ruling over a city of thirst and despair.
And with each passing day, his dream seemed to inch closer to reality. As Serpete's attacks intensified, Lerman found himself working harder than ever. It seemed like every time he fixed one problem, two more would pop up. He spent long hours in the tunnels, battling against an unseen enemy.
But I'm not one to give up easily. I know the city is counting on me, even if they don't know it.
The conflict between Lerman and Serpete was like a chess game played in the dark. Serpete would make a move, clogging a major pipeline or contaminating a reservoir. Then Lerman would counter, working tirelessly to undo the damage. It was a constant back and forth, with the city's water supply hanging in the balance.
As the battle rages on, I begin to notice patterns in Serpete's attacks. This isn't just random vandalism. There's a method to the madness, a sinister intelligence behind it all. I know I'm up against a formidable foe, but that only makes me more determined to win.
The people of Aquapolis started to feel the effects of Serpete's sabotage. Water pressure dropped, taps ran brown. In some neighborhoods, the water stopped flowing altogether. Panic began to set in. But through it all, Lerman kept working, kept fighting. He was the city's last line of defense, and he wasn't about to let them down. As Lerman delved deeper into the mystery of the city's water woes, he uncovered something even more sinister than Serpete's sabotage. Corruption had seeped into the very foundations of Aquapolis. City officials were turning a blind eye to the problems, lining their pockets with bribes from shadowy figures. It was like fighting a hydra cut off one head, and two more would grow in its place.
I can't fight this battle alone.
He started reaching out to fellow workers, honest officials, anyone who would listen. He told them about Serpete, about the corruption, about the danger facing their city. Some laughed him off as a conspiracy theorist. Others were too scared to get involved. But a few brave souls joined his cause.
With my small band of allies, we began to push back against the tide of corruption. We documented evidence of sabotage, tracked patterns of bribery, and worked to expose the truth. It was dangerous work. More than once, I found myself threatened or attacked. But I refused to back down. The future of Aquapolis was at stake.
As word of Lerman's efforts spread, the people of the city began to take notice. They started asking questions, demanding answers from their leaders. Slowly but surely, the tide of public opinion began to turn. Lerman was no longer just fighting in the shadows. He had become a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in the darkness that had fallen over Aquapolis. As Lerman's influence grew, so did the intensity of Serpent's attacks.
The villain seemed to take my efforts as a personal affront.
He doubled down on his sabotage, targeting not just the water system but Lerman himself. Threats were made. Lerman's home was vandalized.
It was clear that Serpent would stop at nothing to see Aquapolis fall, but I wasn't about to back down.
If anything, Serpent's increased aggression only fueled Lerman's determination. He worked around the clock, barely sleeping, always on the move.
My knowledge of the city's water system became my greatest weapon. Where Serpent sought to destroy, I was always there to rebuild.
The conflict between Lerman and Serpent had become more than just a battle over water. It was a war for the soul of Aquapolis. On one side stood Serpent, representing greed, corruption, and destruction. On the other was Lerman, a symbol of hope, perseverance, and the indomitable spirit of the common man.
As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the situation in Aquapolis grew dire. Water shortages became commonplace. Disease began to spread. The city teetered on the brink of chaos.
It seemed that despite all of Lerman's efforts, Serpent might actually win. But just when all hope seemed lost, fate decided to intervene in a most unexpected way. In the darkest hour of Aquapolis, when the city's taps ran dry and hope seemed all but lost, a divine presence made itself known. God Swanger, the deity of water and justice, had been watching the conflict unfold.
Moved by my unwavering dedication and disgusted by Serpent's cruelty, Swanger decided it was time to intervene.
The god's arrival was heralded by a sudden torrential downpour that seemed to come from nowhere. The rain fell in sheets, drenching the parched city.
But this was no ordinary rainstorm. The water glowed with an ethereal blue light, and where it touched, corruption withered and died. It was as if the very essence of purity was washing over Aquapolis.
God Swanger appeared to Lerman in a vision, commending him for his tireless efforts. The deity spoke of balance, of the sacred nature of water, and of the grave sin Serpent had committed by trying to deprive people of this essential element.
Swanger bestowed upon me a portion of divine power, charging me with the task of cleansing the city once and for all.
With this divine blessing, Lerman felt his strength renewed. He could sense the flow of water throughout the city as if it were an extension of his own body.
I knew exactly where each pipe led, could feel every blockage and contamination. Armed with this new power and the backing of a god, I set out to confront Serpent and end his reign of terror once and for all.
God Swanger's wrath fell heavily upon Captain Serpent. The deity appeared before the villain in all its terrifying glory, a towering figure of churning water and flashing lightning.
What is this?
Serpent, for all his bravado, found himself cowering before the awesome power of the water god. Swanger's voice boomed like thunder, pronouncing judgment on the one who had caused so much suffering. God Swanger, as God Swanger, you, who have sought to deprive others of water, shall now never know relief from thirst. Your body will constantly crave water, but no matter how much you drink, your thirst will never be quenched. Moreover, any body of water you touch will instantly become foul and undrinkable. Serpent's punishment didn't end there. The god decreed that he would be bound to the very sewers he had tried to destroy. He would spend his days wandering the tunnels, forever cleaning and maintaining them. The very system he had sought to ruin would now be his eternal prison and responsibility.
No, this can't be.
As the curse took hold, Serpent's appearance began to change. His skin became dry and cracked, his eyes sunken and desperate. He tried to drink from the sewer waters, but they turned to sludge in his mouth. Realizing the full weight of his punishment, Serpent let out a wail of despair that echoed through the tunnels of Aquapolis, a chilling reminder of the price of cruelty and selfishness. With Serpent cursed and the divine power of God Swanger flowing through him, Lerman set about healing the wounds inflicted on Aquapolis. He moved through the city like a force of nature, his mere presence enough to clear blockages and purify contaminated water.
It's time to restore our city.
Pipes that had been clogged for months suddenly flowed freely. Reservoirs that had been poisoned became crystal clear. The people of Aquapolis watched in awe as their city was transformed. Taps that had been dry for weeks suddenly gushed with clean, fresh water. The air itself seemed cleaner, as if the city was taking a collective deep breath after holding it for so long. And at the center of it all was Lerman, no longer the invisible hero, but a beacon of hope for all to see.
We can rebuild and make it better than before.
As he worked, Lerman didn't just fix the physical damage. He also rooted out the corruption that had allowed Serpent's sabotage to go unchecked for so long. Crooked officials were exposed, illegal dumping operations were shut down, and a new era of transparency in water management began. Lerman's actions weren't just saving the city's water supply, they were cleansing its very soul. The final act of Lerman's triumph came when he descended into the sewers one last time. There, in the dank tunnels where his journey had begun, he found Serpent. The once proud captain was now a pitiful sight, desperately trying to drink from the filthy waters he was condemned to clean.
Here, take this. It's all I can offer.
In that moment, Lerman felt not triumph, but pity. He offered Serpent a single drop of clean water, the only relief the cursed man would know for eternity. It was an act of mercy that spoke volumes about Lerman's character. In the weeks and months that followed Serpent's defeat, Aquapolis underwent a remarkable transformation. The water crisis that had brought the city to its knees became a distant memory. In its place, a new appreciation for the precious resource bloomed. People no longer took their clean water for granted.
We must cherish this gift.
Conservation efforts sprang up across the city, and new technologies were developed to make the water system more efficient than ever. Lerman, once an unsung hero, was now celebrated as the savior of Aquapolis. Statues were erected in his honor, and his story was taught in schools. But true to his humble nature, Lerman shied away from the spotlight.
I'm just doing my part.
He continued his work in the water department, now as its head, ensuring that the city's water supply remained pure and plentiful for generations to come. The curse of Serpent served as a constant reminder of the consequences of greed and cruelty. Occasionally, workers in the deepest parts of the sewer system would catch glimpses of the former captain, eternally thirsting and cleaning. These sightings became urban legends, cautionary tales told to remind people of the importance of compassion and stewardship.
We must never forget the lessons we've learned.
Perhaps the most significant change was in the city's relationship with water itself. Aquapolis became known as a leader in water conservation and management. Other cities sent delegations to learn from their example. The people of Aquapolis took pride in their clean rivers and efficient systems. Water, once taken for granted, was now recognized as the precious gift it truly was. The tale of Lerman, Serpent, and the water crisis of Aquapolis became more than just a local legend. It spread far and wide, carrying with it powerful lessons about the importance of humility, generosity, and respect for our natural resources. People around the world were inspired by Lerman's selfless dedication and horrified by Serpent's cruel selfishness.
Lerman showed us what true heroism looks like.
One of the most profound lessons to emerge from the story was the power of ordinary people to effect change. Lerman wasn't a superhero or a powerful politician. He was just a man who cared deeply about his work in his city. His story reminded people that true heroism often comes from unexpected places and that everyone has the potential to make a difference in their community.
We all have the power to make a change.
The curse of Serpent, while harsh, served as a powerful metaphor for the consequences of greed and disregard for others. It taught that those who seek to deprive others of essential resources often end up depriving themselves of something even more valuable, their humanity. The image of Serpent, forever thirsting in a world of water, became a potent symbol of the futility of selfish actions. Perhaps the most important lesson was the value of water itself. In a world where clean water is becoming increasingly scarce, the story of Aquapolis served as a wake-up call. It reminded people that water is not just a commodity, but the very essence of life. The tale inspired conservation efforts and sparked innovations in water management around the globe.
We must protect our resources for future generations.
In the end, Lerman's legacy wasn't just a saved city,